Good evening, Browns fans. Good Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday evening to all of you. It is a horrible Monday edition of OBR, not OBR Weekly. That's my old show of Gang of Three. And
Once
Pete
upon a
is not
time.
showing up for some reason. Hang on a second here. Let me see if I can get him to reappear. Oh, he's going to go out and come back in. So how you doing, Lane?
Doing another
Yeah,
disappointing Browns performance on Sunday, but that's what we expect.
Well, yeah, and it's a particularly horrible Monday because the way that they lost in the last minute of the game, a game they should have won, and obviously Browns fans who watched them lead through much of the game are disappointed in the result. Pete informs me he'll be right back, so we're going to get it's going to be a gang of three and not a gang of two tonight. But we can start off, you and I, Lane. Obviously, a gravely disappointing game from the Cleveland Browns, ending in the last second. And Kevin Stefanski getting a lot of criticism these days. Let's just lead off with that because that's dominating our forums right now. Dominating my direct message box in the OBR forums. He is being very conservative. He made some interesting timeout selections toward the end of the game. And we heard sort of the same old today from him when he talked to the media.
Normally, that's the story that you get out of him. You don't get much. Doesn't say much. Tells you just enough. Problem is that at some point, just enough isn't good enough.
Right.
They've come into this season with all kind of changes. Rookies producing all over the field. Dylan Gabriel in his first start. Disappointing way to lose the game. They were conservative, but they had opportunities that they left on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a detriment to what they were doing, along with some of the conservatism. You run the football. And you look in the first half, they had thrown the ball, I believe, more than they ran the ball. It was very close. Second half, tide started to change a little bit. Then we got to the fourth quarter. The running game stopped working. Nothing happening in the short passing game. They were bringing safeties up to try to help with the tight end strong Browns passing game due to wide receivers not being able to catch the ball or run through a route or run a route correctly. Or a couple occasions, Gabriel missed on opportunities and the pass rush got in there and caused problems. It's another story of the Browns doing not just enough, coming a little short. You look at what happened on the touchdown drive. People complaining about the Stefanski times out. There's two theories to why you would do that. One, you wanted to keep your pass rushers and those guys on the field, and you wanted to have them with some kind of breath left in them. So you're calling times out. Plus, you wanted to stop the clock because obviously they didn't feel that they were going to stop Minnesota. They wanted to give themselves an opportunity to have time on the clock. So it's a double-edged sword. It's how you want to look at it and see which evil is going to benefit you the most. And in the case of the Browns, it generally means that they're going to flip the wrong side of that sword.
Yep.
It didn't help that Denzel Ward blew coverage.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very Browns-like performance.
Right.
What you get from it. Quinshon Judkins running his ass off. The offensive line, much better with Jack Conklin in there. Too bad the guy next to him, Wyatt Teller, didn't have a good day at all.
Right.
The left tackle situation with Levinson it's horrendous, and that Robinson, they have no choice. He's going to have to be up to speed. this week for Pittsburgh because they can't continue that path. What was more disturbing is that as bad as his pass blocking was in pass, he was okay against the run, but he just errors, and it was the thing. But when you get down to it, you can't have the number of penalties this team does, especially pre-snap. There is nothing more inexcusable than pre-snap penalties, other than maybe unsportsmanlike conduct. And this team just lives on that, and that's what we saw in those first few weeks with Flacco. At least he was getting guys in position.
Right.
So that pre-snap wasn't as bad. It reared its ugly head on Sunday. They paid the price for it, got themselves behind the sticks a bit. But it's still a game that they could have won. And I guess that's showing some kind of promise and progress with this team, because at least they're in winnable competitive situations. They just have to find a way to win. Yeah,
exactly. They are not doing that at this point. Welcome in, Pete Smith. How you doing, Pete?
I am irritated. I'll pick up on Lane's point. If the Browns had won this game, everybody would have said that everybody contributed. Everybody sort of had a hand in winning this game, and that's ultimately why I feel everybody had a hand in losing it, because ultimately they didn't get enough. Lane sort of touched on it. Some of the things that were frustrating. I think the Browns offense didn't do enough. Obviously didn't score 20 points. I think they ultimately asked the defense to do too much in the end. There's a clock on Jim Schwartz's defense, particularly against a team like the Minnesota Vikings, because of the receivers they have, because of their ability to defeat man coverage. And the Browns to this point in year 3, and Denzel Ward is a huge reason why he talks in terms of pitches. They have one heck of a fastball. They hang a whole lot of curveballs out there. And, this was a situation where guys hit it out of the park. And Denzel Ward has been notoriously awful at executing zone coverage and being in the wrong place. But, for me, a lot of people want to get on Kevin Stefanski, and I think there's a place to do that. There's two drives before the Vikings took a lead are sort of where I'm at. Because on the one hand, people were mad at Kevin Stefanski because he didn't run the ball enough the first time, and then they were mad at him because he ran the ball too much the second time. And frankly, I think there's some merit to both. I don't know about you, Lane. I felt like they threw their best punch on the second to last drive, and they get behind the sticks because, of course, KT Leviston, who cannot play right now. I do not fault him for the situation he's been in, but he cannot play. He gets put behind the sticks. They get a pass to David Njoku for 11 yards. Quinjon Judkins runs for 14 yards, and you're like, okay, we dug ourselves out of this hole. We've got a shot. The next play, to me, was the play of the game. Dylan Gabriel rolls to his right, and he misses Njoku high. Njoku had all kinds of room to run.
Yep.
I felt like that was the game. Dylan Gabriel was mad at himself in the moment, understandably. And I think, and I'm not saying this to defend Kevin Stefanski, only to sort of paint a picture. I think that informed him on the last drive, which I do think he was too conservative. And the reason, there's all this talk about the clock. To me, the clock was never a factor in this game until the Browns got the ball at the very end. It did not matter. I thought the Browns played it like the clock mattered when there were 3:30 left in the game. The clock did not matter at that point. The Minnesota Vikings didn't care about the clock at any point, so people worrying about Kevin Stefanski using timeouts to try to save some clock, it was irrelevant. But to me, I think the criticism of Kevin Stefanski and why I think he misjudged the situation was you needed to move the chains on that second to last drive. The clock was irrelevant. Getting them to use their timeouts was irrelevant. I think they ultimately figured it out on the third down. Kevin Stefanski, this is one of those things to be a fly on the wall, because Kevin Stefanski in the post game seemed to be pretty happy with his third down call on that play. I don't know what Gabriel did or did not see, but either way, that I do feel like Kevin Stefanski, who I'm usually pretty happy with in terms of his aggressiveness, did get too conservative in that moment. But I think that the previous drive, I think that was the game. I think they thought they had it. They had the play drawn up. He just missed it to Njoku, and it felt like that was their last best punch.
Well, I don't think that we actually got to see anything further from that, because I do agree that was a huge play and a major factor in what it is. And it may have led him to the decision he made on that last drive prior to the couple plays that no time left. But when you come down and you look at it, that if you're going to put yourself in that position and you got 3+ minutes left in the game, you have to play to win this game. Run the ball, nowhere. You could see the safeties walked up. Run the ball, nowhere. They try to pull and they run into each other and totally blew the play up. You have to coach to win. You have to play to win. You have the rookie quarterback in there who showed you throughout that game that he was capable of doing something, which ended up being they did nothing. And that's where I feel Kevin Stefanski just blew this entire opportunity after they missed with the Njoku pass series before. They left it on the field. They left plays on the field. And it comes back to that same revolving door that we see every week, with them fundamentally screwing up at points in a game. This time a critical game where he took the ball out of this kid's hands when he showed he was big enough to play in the moment. Let the kid play.
I do wonder, because Kevin Stefanski by and large is aggressive. In fact, there was one 4th down where I thought for sure, even though it's 4th and 1 on their end of the field, I thought for sure it was going to be see if the defense jumps and then punt. And the Browns said, nope, we're handing the ball off and got the first down. I do. And as much as I think Kevin Stefanski has to own this, and I suspect Kevin Stefanski will be like, screw this, I'm not doing this again. I do think there's an element where he gets to a point where he can't trust guys. And when you're coaching, you can't trust it. And honestly, I don't think that guy was Dylan Gabriel, though, being a rookie in his first start, you could understand why he'd sort of protect the kid in that situation. But I think it's a situation where he didn't think he could roll left. He didn't think he couldn't trust the offensive line to protect. And he didn't, I don't know that he had enough receivers to trust that they were going to go to the right spot. And, that is unfortunately the situation the Browns find themselves in when they're on the script and they're able to sort of go with the plan. They feel good. They're aggressive. It looks better. When they get into late game situations and now you're trusting these guys to execute, it's in as much as I want them to still be aggressive, there's a part of me that says, I get it. I get that you can't trust these guys to do it. That becomes a difficult situation. I still think he misjudged it. I still think he handled it wrong in terms of the clock and everything. That's the only thing I can sort of, if I'm sitting there trying to get in his head, that's the part where I sit there and go, I get it. I still don't agree with it, but at least I sort of understand.
I think it would have sent a message to those players in that locker room if they would have went out and showed they were aggressively trying to win that game with 3.5 minutes left.
Yep.
And I think it sends a wrong message. I've been in locker rooms, been around these guys. At some point, they start to feel that same way with that mentality. I think everybody who was involved in that game, and speaking to a couple people today, they were surprisingly comfortable with Dylan Gabriel and what he was able to do, how he handled the huddle and talked to those guys. I think Stefanski shelled up, was hoping to find a way to get a first down there with 3 minutes left, and didn't give them the truest opportunity. And we can sit here and say they have no receivers because they can't run right, routes right. They drop balls. The element in this game is that the ability to get a running back out of the backfield and 2 tight ends was there all day. And this is where I think the head coach blew it at the highest level in this opportunity for them to win this game. And
we've got some questions about about that last series specifically. Fumble wants to know, why do you not throw on first down? Why do you wait until third down, especially when they're stacking the box, right? And Judkins was stoned on the first run, got one run, 1 yard, I think, on the second. Why go run, pass, punt, Pete?
I can't argue with them going the first down run because Judkins had been so effective and they had been in situations where they were just blowing through those situations. I understand why people would sort of look. I guess where I want to get to, and again, this is where you sit there and you go, who do I have? Who do I trust? Do I trust Dillon Gabriel enough in this situation to give him 2 plays and give him a choice and say, look, if you get a stacked box, check to this and we can get out of it. My greater annoyance, and I hate this with rookie quarterbacks or most young quarterbacks anyway, I hate the decision to go to empty because you take away you take away any threat of a run. You take away the defense is having to even be responsible for a potential run. I was sitting there at the time when they were in empty. I was saying, please, in my head thinking, please shift it back to the backfield. Please shift it back to the backfield. Give them something to think about just to force that possibility. Because one of the plays the Browns had run and run successfully, and NFL teams get away with this all the time, is the no mesh play action, where the running back just keeps going and the quarterback just rolls out and tosses it to him in the flat. Yep. The Browns had run this play with Judkins and thrown it to him in that exact scenario. That's where I hate empty. When you've got a veteran quarterback and when the Browns were cooking at different points with guys they could trust, I get it. You can force the defense into certain specific things, but I just don't think you're there with the rookie. I want to give you that element. And plus you can run the guy out of the backfield and obviously have routes. But again, I don't have a problem necessarily with the first down run. It's when it didn't work that you didn't at least have, again, some sort of check that Dillon Gabriel could go to and say, hey, I've got a better look here. I'm going to go with this. And along those lines, like just speaking of Dillon Gabriel more generally, he did better than I thought he would in some respects. I was in some ways very impressed with how well he saw the field against that defense and what Brian Flores does to teams. I give Kevin Stefanski credit in the first half because I think in a lot of ways he schemed it up well to sort of force the Vikings into certain situations and utilizing Dillon Gabriel to his strengths. But like early in the game, I thought he was a little, I don't want to say tentative. I just didn't feel like the ball was coming out of his hand confidently in some of the throws he was making. But once he got to about the second quarter and it was that Jerry Jeudy pass to the right, where he extends the drive on third down, he rips that ball to the right, and then he comes right back and throws that ball in the corner to Njoku. That's where I thought Dillon Gabriel was really feeling himself and really feeling confident. And I felt a little bit like he may have gotten tentative a little bit later. Again, you see it with the Njoku thing, but overall, for a guy who's in his first ever start, a third round pick that certain radio stations have insisted and tried to jump on with both feet that he can't play dead. He did well enough to, I don't want to say he did well enough to win. He didn't lose the game. He put you in position to succeed. He threw 2 touchdowns in a situation where I think everybody, including clearly the Minnesota Vikings, thought for sure they were going to run the ball as opposed to throwing that ball to Harold Fenton. And this is where I sort of get to this whole situation where you get to this familiar cycle of, we want to see the rookie. We want to see the rookie. We want to see the rookie. Okay, they put the rookie in. Well, they lose with the rookie, and everybody's like, well, okay, now I'm bored. Let's fire the head coach. Like, they aren't coaching themselves on, Dillon Gabriel's not coaching himself. Harold Fann's not coaching himself. Quinshon Judkins, all these rookies somehow, and granted, the Browns did a great job of identifying talent that fits their scheme, but somebody's telling them what to do and how to get in the right positions. At some point, we have to balance the idea of, yes, Kevin Stefanski's got to own a lot in this game, and ultimately they come up short, and they're 1-4, and he has to own that. But something is working for them to be able to come out with these young guys and play well. And this wasn't like a Browns-centric thought. numerous national analysts thought Dylan Gabriel handled himself really well, and the theme was he didn't look like a rookie, which hopefully, as they move ahead, that's going to let them build some confidence, and we're going to see some of the things that we didn't get to see in this game. I'm thrilled that they use the tight end so much. I love the fact that we finally got a David Njoku game where it felt like he was not just manufactured touches, but getting the ball in spots where he could succeed. Now I want them to, hopefully that carries over. Let's not lose that. And now let's add into the other things and build on what Dylan Gabriel's skill set allows him to do.
Lane, your thoughts on Dylan Gabriel and his performance?
He played better than I expected, but I expected him to play fairly well, like we talked about last week. I was beating that drum saying, if we're going to make this move, make it, because this kid can play to the level of expectations that the Browns fans have. Well, you're one start in, and he was the first quarterback in, I don't know, a year and a half who started the game for the Browns and didn't turn her over or throw interceptions or something. He didn't turn the ball over. And they just missed on some opportunities. There was an out and up route down the sideline, the far sideline in that game that, if the receiver doesn't go brain dead and continues through the route, that was the type of throw that we watched Dylan Gabriel make endlessly at Oregon a year ago. The perfect scenario. And so it's not like they didn't try things. It's just they've got such a disconnect and issue at receiver that it's easy to say, well, Gabriel blew that throw, or, you didn't read it right. And then you look and you see a wide receiver standing in one spot.
Mm-hmm.
You're never standing in one spot. You throw it open if something's not there. They had that route. They had Njoku down the seam. There was a few things they missed, but I think he played fairly well for his first start in the NFL. And I'm really interested to see what happens against Pittsburgh now, because now that they've got some film on Gabriel, and they like to bring pressure off those edges. And you better hope Cam Robinson's at left tackle, or it's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, there's a couple questions that I want to shift over to the wide receivers here in a second. But to you, Pete, I was thinking about it earlier today, and isn't Dylan Gabriel strike you as the first quarterback that Kevin Stefanski has had that is really Kevin's choice? I mean, the type of quarterback that he wants for his offensive scheme. Isn't there a little bit more expectation now that Stefanski has the type of quarterback, the processor that he wants at the position?
I mean, outside of Baker Mayfield, because obviously he picked him twice, given that he went for the job and then went for it again. That Baker Mayfield had everything to do with that. But yes. I mean, and this is what we all said we want, or I should say, said we wanted leading into the draft was Kevin Stefanski, pick your guy and let's go. And then he picked Dylan Gabriel, and everybody's like, whoa, I don't want you to pick your guy anymore. I want all these other guys.
Right.
So, and look, it wouldn't have been my choice, but I wanted Kevin Stefanski to make his choice. And look, I like the way Dylan Gabriel handles himself. I like the way he plays the game in terms of he's decisive. I thought, the stuff that Joe Flacco wasn't doing, getting out of bad plays that weren't there, Dylan Gabriel did those things. Dylan Gabriel did a good job of saying, because this came up in the red zone, second down, the play's not there. He didn't get what he wanted. So he throws it out the back of the end zone instead of trying to meander and create and do these other things, because he understands his situation with the protection. Third down, they come back and he puts a bean right on David Njoku for the touchdown. Like, that's what I want to see happen. Obviously, that's an easy situation to pick because they score, but I want him to make smart decisions. Don't force situations that then risk a turnover, or in this case, holding on to the ball too long and then risking a sack, fumble, or something like that. Like, I go back to the Detroit Lions game where I thought Jared Goff was very smart in how he handled the game and waited for his chances. I thought Dylan Gabriel did that same thing this week, which is good for a rookie. These are the things I think make for a smart football player. It's just now they've got to push it. They've got to push him to get more. And and what Lane has said, last week, talking about him being demanding of his receivers and stuff, I'm hoping that we're going to see that carry over and start to see that come out of this week. The fact that now that you don't have Joe Flacco who's holding onto the ball and not making throws, Dylan Gabriel can say, look, man, I'm trying to get you the ball. You're not in the right spot. Hopefully that's going to remedy itself. Now, that's not going to be – I don't assume that's going to be overnight, as much as I'd love to see the Browns put up 50 on the Steelers. But I'm hoping that now that we've made this move, now that we're saying this is where the direction we're going, that now we're going to start seeing him demand accountability and him get it from those guys. And that if you're a guy like Jerry Jeudy and you're saying, man, I'm frustrated I'm not getting the ball. And in some defense of Jerry Jeudy, the Vikings did shift their coverage to try to eliminate him at various points. But to Jerry Jeudy's got to perk up a little bit and go, listen, if I just go to where I'm supposed to go, this guy's going to get me the ball in the way that Jameis did. And hopefully that's going to start creating things. That worked for David Njoku, and that's the best example. Hopefully that's going to keep going.
Yeah, Lane, the offense is not just bad. It's historically bad. Mm-hmm. They have the longest streak of being held to 17 and under points in the NFL in 2 decades. It's been since the 49ers of the late aughts that have had that sort of situation. And now, as I said to Pete, one of the excuses that Stefanski's never had his guy at quarterback, arguably Mayfield, who was a Dorsey pick, but, should have worked out a little bit better than it did. But now that he's got his guy, that excuse sort of goes away, doesn't it?
Sure it does. I mean, don't expect it overnight, but expect it soon. If he's fully committed to Dylan Gabriel and is going to put the ball in his hands and let this young man play, then you let him play. If we're going to sit here and shroud him in secrecy and, not let this kid do the things that he can do or has shown he could do at the college level getting here, then, you're fooling yourself and you're fooling everybody else. So why bother with the charade? I believe that they got his feet underneath him now. He's got that taste. He's got that feel of that speed now. It's a little different than practice and what they saw on Sunday, especially against Brian Flores' defense that can really confuse and complicate things for you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dylan Gabriel was very good at getting back there and letting that thing go. And the Browns' ability to run the football is going to make his job and that offensive job's proficiency increase as long as they can keep progressing in them steps. Don't get me wrong. I have nothing but poor thoughts about what Stefanski and everything that went down in that game Sunday. I think he blew it. I think they blew it. And I think that with Dylan Gabriel, you got to give him the opportunity because they need to find out what they have here. That was Stefanski's guy. He wanted him. He's their processor. Kid's quick. They believe he can see what they see on the field and know where to go with the football. Well, it's going to become time here in the next few weeks that he gets out there and they give him that opportunity to do what he knows best. And don't be pigeonholed into a corner with this look or that look or do this and do that. You have to get to the point where you trust this kid and let it rip. Remember, 1 week into this.
Right.
Give it a couple more weeks and we should start seeing efficiency improve.
Well, you have to think Miami's the game where they're sitting there going, this is when it has to start hitting. Yep. The Dolphins are terrible. Not to say they don't have talented football players, but just they look like a team that is already looking ahead to the offseason. If you can get this one in Pittsburgh, obviously hugely difficult. The Browns don't tend to play well in Pittsburgh unless it's in the playoffs, and they want to end Ben Roethlisberger's career. But if they can, it would obviously be an enormous win for them to get this week against a team, unfortunately, coming off their bye week. But Pittsburgh's hardly unbeatable, and they've got a ton of guys down for injury. If they can get this one, then everybody's going to change their tune on where this thing can go because then they're going to look at the schedule and go, Dolphins, Jets, bye week, a bunch of teams that cannot stress how difficult this stretch of schedule is. Now, having said that, no one's going to feel bad for this team. No one feels bad for the Browns. They're potentially going to be sitting at best 2-4 coming out of the stretch. But if they can get it rolling in time for that stretch, the Browns could find themselves very quickly back at 500 in a division where everybody is struggling. And obviously, this is the big one, because if you beat Pittsburgh, who's currently 3-1, that drops them to 3-2, and suddenly they're reachable, and everybody else is terrible in the division, at least record-wise. So the opportunity is there, and that's the thing is I'm hoping both Kevin Stefanski in what he's hopefully reflecting on from this past game is looking at this. I mean, he always talks in terms of this, an opportunity. I'm hoping he sees this as an opportunity for Dylan Gabriel. This Pittsburgh Steelers are going to do a whole bunch of the similar things coverage scheme-wise that the Minnesota Vikings did, which wasn't too big for Dylan Gabriel then, which hopefully gives you confidence he's going to be able to function. I don't expect Jalen Ramsey's going to be out there. Alonzo Highsman's not going to be out there. So hopefully they can, get something going and the defense continues to play well. The issue is with the losses you had with the Bengals and the Vikings, you just keep digging a hole. You're more competitive, but the hole keeps getting deeper, and you're making it more difficult to try to get out.
Exactly.
Well, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see now, because you could essentially say that there's a lot riding on this game. If you're Kevin Stefanski and the Cleveland Browns, this is a huge moment for them, and there's no better time than now to let this young man play his game. And if that means you start seeing more of the Jabari Thrashes or the Gages at Corley, you have to make a point to your team and your roster that if you're not getting it done, if certain guys aren't getting it done, then you have to make a statement. And we're close to that statement time, because your receivers are getting nothing done.
Right.
We've had the quarterback holding the ball excuse. We've had the offensive line excuse. We've got the drops, everything else. At a point, the excuses run out. If you keep trotting the same thing out there, then that's on you. As a head coach, that is on you. That's on your staff, because you have other talent, maybe not as good, but you don't know, because you don't know how they mesh with this quarterback. You don't know what's going to happen on the field. These guys might actually go and run routes and get to where they're supposed to. Run the open, run through the route. You don't know. So this is a big pivotal moment for this organization with the Steelers on board.
I think we might have gotten a taste of that, though. The Browns came out in this past game, and Dylan Sampson and Quinshon Judkins are both in the backfield. We saw Malachi Corley way more than I saw more Malachi Corley in this past game than I thought I'd see all season, including the jet sweep, which worked. It seems like that message is being sent, whether or not it's being received or not, to be determined. But it seems like, at least in the beginning of the game, and again, script helps, because once the game starts rolling and you start seeing how it's going to play out between KT Levinson's struggles and Wyatt Teller's struggles, you've got to sort of adjust and potentially change up, which is why I think you saw more Jerome Ford again, although I think he played reasonably well. But it certainly seemed as though, the people are saying, oh, man, I want to see more Dylan Sampson. I want to see them try to get some of these younger guys incorporated. We at least got a taste of it. I'm curious to see if we're going to see more of it. If they're just going to start leaning into it and say, screw it, we're going to go with the guys who are going to give us the best chance to win right this week, as opposed to trying to worry about, season long or anybody's feelings getting hurt.
Right.
Well, one guy who has been underperforming quite a bit is Jerry Jeudy. Now, of course, he's getting a lot of attention because there's not much behind him, on the wide receiver depth chart, especially with Tillman gone. But he's among the league leaders in drops. And I'm wondering, Lane, from your perspective, Pete sort of touched on the fact that, Jeudy might not have been getting the ball as much as he expected because of the, turnover reverse strategy. But, what do you do about this? Is it just a matter of continuing to go to him until he gets in a groove, or, do you start losing trust in him? But he's dropping the ball an awful lot.
Well, he's dropping the ball at an alarming rate that the staff is taking notice. So that should tell you something right there, that Judy's their number one, and they're taking notice that he's not getting open or where he needs to be, or he's not holding on to the ball. He's a temperamental type of guy, all upbeat and everything, and wants to be that guy. And he puts a lot of pressure on himself. And we talked about this the last 2 weeks on the show, that he needs right and positiveness around him. And he's not creating any positive energy for himself because he's not making plays. When he gets opportunities, he's not making plays. And at some point, as a quarterback or a play caller, where your first thought was, got to get this guy the ball. He's our guy. Get him the ball. Then it starts to waver a little bit in time, because then you start thinking that he's not getting open, or he's not making plays. He's not doing this. And then you start looking for that complementary piece that can at least keep those chains moving. And I think it's going to be an issue that if Jerry Jeudy doesn't find himself and start reeling in the mistakes he's making, that we're going to start seeing some of that small incremental change, because they really have no other option. When you can't go to your guy and feel confident or comfortable, you have a problem. And they're in a problematic state right now at the number one receiver spot with Jerry Jeudy.
Pete,
just relative to this game,
mm-hmm.
well, I would say this for Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy is infinitely better when the ball is on time and on schedule.
Yep.
He is not nearly as effective when the ball is not where he thinks it's supposed to be on time. And the ball he quote unquote dropped this week was a terrible ball by Dylan Gabriel, but nevertheless, he's still a pro. He should do the best he can to catch it. For this game in particular, they kept shading the safety to his side, and the adjustment, or if you want to call it that, was the trade-off was they played single coverage on David Njoku, and David Njoku took advantage. In fact, there's one play in the second quarter, the drive where before the half, at the top, second down, right in the red zone on the 9-yard line, they had a corner on David Njoku, and I was sitting there thinking, "Oh man, they're gonna go some kind of throw it up to him or something in the corner, something there." And they ended up running the ball to Ford for 0 yards. I was thinking in that moment, this is another one where I hope Dylan Gabriel sees this, can check to something. Now they came back to this exact look or something very similar to it, and then capitalized and got Njoku the ball and scored. But I think that's one where they, in the moment, sort of went, man, we had this, we should have taken advantage, and they came back to it and capitalized. But if that's the trade-off, so be it. If they want to bring extra attention to Jerry Jeudy, and David Njoku can have the type of game he's going to have, that's one way to do it. Then you've got Harold Fannin, who had a low contribution game, though that's not really, I think that's just, sort of an aberration. I think they're going to continue to try to get him the ball. But that then gives guys opportunities. Is it going to be Isaiah Bond? Is it going to be Jamari Thrash? Is it going to be Dylan Sampson? Is it Quinshon Judkins? Because Quinshon Judkins looks really good catching the balls, both between his time in college and he's been a natural pass catcher for the Browns. That opens up opportunities. The other part that we need to see, and this comes down to production, is we need to see them try to stretch the field.
Yep.
And that's the last piece of this thing once they can get this whole thing rolling. But at least for this game, the trade-off was they took away Jerry Jeudy. They didn't want to let him get going. And the Browns punished them with David Njoku over and over and over again. It's just the one time they couldn't do it was the one time they needed to do it the most.
Do you think that this is going to be alleviated to any degree, Lane, just by the fact that Dylan is going to be getting more first team reps, where he's been, second team up to this point, get a better chance to get timing together with Jeudy, and maybe, he's already got sort of a groove with Thrash or Larvadin, and I don't know. Do you think that the more reps he's going to get with Judy is going to improve things?
Well, I don't think there's any way it really can't, because every rep that you get, first team rep is an important rep. And now he's getting them, and they're working it. And they recognize the issue that they have with the ability to stretch the field, get the ball to receivers downfield. You can bet that that's something that they're going to have a lot of focus on, because there's no rhyme or reason why, with the young man going to have his second start and potentially your tackles there and your line is as solid as it's going to be, the opportunity to pass block for him to get back there and make that quick read and get rid of that ball, those opportunities should be far more in existence now. And he has the ability to throw the ball downfield. They've just done a terrible job in layering things. And it's been the entire season. It's just not a, let's go to London and let's see Dylan Gabriel not get the ball downfield.
Right.
I fully expect that we're going to start seeing some of that vertical come into play here. And they really have a choice, because they have to start stretching defenses, because teams are just going to continue to cheat more and more. So, yeah, I think that you're going to see them take shots this week.
Whatever you want to say about Dylan Gabriel as an overall talent, how far he can go, he's going to build chemistry because he operates on time. Like that will fix a lot in a hurry. Whether or not the receivers catch the ball, we shall see. But just in terms of when I get out on my break, the ball's going to be there. That just changes everything. When they're guessing, they're not sure when it's going to be there. That screws with receivers more than you'd think, even if they're professionals. The challenge is going to be what happens when things break down. That's where sort of the extra element comes into piece, and that's where sort of that extra stuff. But just in terms of the immediate return on investment, it comes down to receivers suddenly going, the ball's where it's supposed to be. I'm ready to go. That's going to make me better. So long as he's on target with the passes, obviously, as long as he puts it where it's supposed to be, that's going to allow them to thrive immediately. That's where you can see an instant jump. And I think that's why some people were, surprised at how good he was. And that's what you saw in the preseason. He's the type of guy where it doesn't matter. The ball's going to be where it's supposed to be, and you better get your hands up.
That's going to be interesting, because this could be a situation, too, where this team just needs to make a couple big plays downfield to loosen things up. I'm not talking about loosening the defense up, but that will do that on its own. But just these guys in general who've had the struggles, sometimes it just takes some confidence in the guy throwing the ball, confidence in making a play that can start changing that dynamic. And I fully expect, because Dylan Gabriel is going to get back there, he's going to get on the back foot, and he's going to let it rip. And if you're not where you're supposed to be, you're going to see the problem that it's going to create, because in practice, this staff is going to see this kid going back there now with this first unit throwing darts at these guys. So there'll be no excuse. They're going to get that element down, that timing, that Pete talked about. As important as that is, now they're going to see it in practice, and they're going to get an idea that, he's got that mojo working with this and this and this, and he's just not working here. And they're going to spend that time, but you could likely see some of that dynamic change in the receiving room as we go along. If that doesn't pick up, if they don't improve that entire situation that they're in, because the one thing that's going to say, this kid's going to throw the ball.
Mm-hmm. What's interesting, I think, is the perspective you're getting that sort of informs me and makes me think this is going to, I don't know if it's going to work. And again, I don't know that he's going to be the answer, but in terms of what they need him to be right now, is I'm hearing this from defensive players on the Browns. I'm hearing this from Myles Garrett in terms of how they view Dylan Gabriel. And that's where I sort of go, okay, they must be taking notice that he's on time and doing these things, because if the defensive guys notice and they think he can do it, that says a lot to me. The receivers have to figure out their part, but and then it becomes, the whole chess game of, teams trying to jump stuff and the adjustments and all that stuff. But in terms of when Myles Garrett's being asked and Grant Delpit's being asked, all this stuff, there's a certain element of giving the company line, but I do think there's some interesting insight into getting a sense that, yes, he's not afraid. He operates on time. They don't see a change. They don't see a drop off. They don't see a worry with him.
Yeah. Isaiah Bond, you see a potential answer there, Lane? I mean, he should be able to stretch the field.
Well, he's got the speed to stretch the field. It's just the Browns haven't been making those attempts to stretch the field. And no, I wouldn't look at Isaiah Bond and say that, he's a guy that's going to just suddenly change things for him. It's going to take time too, because he's not the best route runner. He does some weird things when he catches the ball. He jumps a lot and he gets the ball into him too much. But those are all things that they're working on. Excuse me. And it takes time. He's a raw rookie with no camp. So this is learn on the fly with him too. In time, maybe so, because he is talented. He's fast. He's the type of player that they need and covet. But today he's just there. And if something can happen positive with him, they'll take those chances. He's not a guy that you're just going to depend on right now, week in and week out, that he's going to catch a handful of balls and he's going to get 70 yards in receiving. It just doesn't work that way because he just doesn't run good enough routes yet. And I don't think that trust has been built yet.
You agree with that, Pete?
I watched Isaiah Bond in college. This is what he was. I don't think he can. I never understood the people who thought he was a 3rd round pick. I just didn't see that. I think at best he's a 3rd, 4th option as a receiver, which is fine. You got him as an undrafted free agent. If that's what he can be, great. If he can be a field stretcher and occasional big playmaker, awesome. Unfortunately, the Browns need a little bit more of that right this second. I just don't know how realistic that is, but he can absolutely give them a dimension they haven't had. And, I don't think Alabama and Texas weren't coaching him, but certainly the Browns are trying to do everything they can to school him up as fast as possible. It's on him to sort of take it. And again, I'm impressed by how fast he's been able to get up to speed in certain elements, but the stuff that he didn't do well in college, route running, the way he can track the ball at times, those things are still there. And I don't think it's going to be something that's going to be fixed by, say, week 12 or something. Right. I think it's going to be a long process.
All right, let's talk a little bit about that final drive by the Minnesota Vikings. Wentz went 9 for 9, I believe, with 71 yards on that 80-yard drive. They got an average of 8 yards a play. Pete, you've mentioned the notion that this defense sort of runs on a clock, right? That, if we turn over the ball too much, we're punting too much, we're not extending our time with the offense on the field, that their powers diminish over time. Is that what you think what happened on Sunday? Or did maybe shifting a little bit more to a zone defense from the man-to-man have an effect on that? What happened that made the Minnesota Vikings so damn effective on that final drive?
So going into the season, there were 2 offenses that scared the hell out of me against the Browns defense. The Detroit Lions, and we saw why, and then the Minnesota Vikings. And it's because they, up until the game, they had a really good offensive line. They had a quarterback that could throw the ball around. They had running backs, and they had really, really talented receivers. And obviously, they didn't have the line. They didn't have the starting quarterback. And Kevin O'Connell deserves a ton of credit. He came up with a great game plan. And got the ball out of Carson Wentz's hands and everything else with that. But the problem is when you're playing Justin Jefferson and you're playing Jordan Addison, they are really good receivers. And you have coaches that are getting paid. And at some point, we saw this with the Ravens game, at some point you're going to get a beat on what the Browns are doing. And if you give them enough time, you're going to find the concept that's going to be problematic enough that they aren't going to be able to defend it with just man coverage. They're going to be able to protect long enough, and they're going to be able to find ways to make that work. So ultimately, at some point, man coverage stops working unless the defensive line is just going to win the game essentially by itself. You've got to be able to do something else. And there are a million different ways to do it. You know, if it's trading man responsibilities in terms of something like quarters, if it's getting into different zones, you can do that. If you want to run some trap coverage, which is what they were trying to do on the last play, that's the ways to do it. But the problem is Carson Wentz has played a ton of football. He knows what man coverage looks like. At some point, you know, they can see the same things over and over and over again. They're just going to win because they've got Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. A lot of teams don't, and the Browns can sort of shut those teams down. But at some, you know, if this team were, let's say they were a contender and they were in the playoffs, at some point you're going to have to come up with something to change up to give the offense something else to think about that you can go to and give them problems. And the Browns have tried this a number of different ways, and cover two is one they really want to be good at, whether it's invert two or different types of half field coverage calls. And it just continuously, and it's way too often it's Denzel Ward. But there have been situations where corners end up selling out safeties and all these other things where you just find wide open receivers. And basically in this situation, the Browns tried a couple different ways to try to change up their looks. The Vikings were better. Jordan Jefferson catching the one ball where they did run zone down the middle of the field. He just beat it. But there is a clock to this whole thing. And you know, there's only so many teams that have the ability to do this on a consistent basis. But like the problem is over the long haul of the season, at some point, you know, if you're in the postseason, you're going to run into one of them. So the answer at that point is you guys score a lot more points, or you're going to have to come up with something else that can give them problems. And to this point in year 3, and it may just not happen with the current premium corner they have, they're going to have to come up with some other way to do this thing.
Lane, your thoughts on that final drive, you know, the final play, any of your thoughts on the situation that
O'Connell couldn't have scripted up a better game plan for the Vikings against the Browns. They made every effort known to man to get the ball out of Carson Wentz's hands. He got the ball out quick, efficiently. They moved the change. Minnesota played well. Cleveland defense rose to the occasion in the middle part of that game and played well. You look at the final drive, they basically did what they had been attempting to do all day, just taking shots, quick openers. And the Browns defensive line, front seven, you could see that the gas wasn't full anymore. And they just kept beating them to it. And it's the same old thing with the Browns coverage unit and coverage. You know, they play man better than they play zone because they have such communication problems or, you know, accepting what the full responsibility of their assignment is. And Denzel Ward, you know, I don't know if he was trying to pull a rabbit out of a hat and bait Wentz or thought he was going to get underneath a throw by Wentz. Wentz wasn't going to make a perfect throw. However you want to call it and look at it, Wentz made a perfect throw, easy touchdown. And we're back to square one. 30 seconds left, and you're losing the game that you had won. People want to blame the defense. You can't blame the defense. Defense plays their asses off. It's going to be interesting to see is this what we're going to see happening here, where teams, it takes them 3 quarters to figure out the Browns after an opening drive, to then put it all together and beat this defense in the fourth quarter. We've seen that it's been a case in the past. I'm hoping that's not what we're seeing here, but Minnesota made it look relatively easy there late in the fourth quarter. And if there was ever something to patch up on your wall to say, this is what you can do to beat this defense, doing that and being precision-like is going to beat this defense like this in the later stages of a game more times than not.
Right. And Wentz really has to be credited. You know, he went 9 for 9 on that drive. You know, a single incomplete pass that doesn't go out of bounds, and you know, maybe it's a slightly different story. You know, we'll see how that. You we'll see if you face similar quarterbacks later on this year. I want to end on a little bit more positive note. Obviously, the draft class this year is succeeding on both sides of the ball. It's been excellent to date. And so we got a couple questions. Philip wanted to know, forget this season. The real question is, do you trust AB to hit another home run next draft? Because this one's inarguably a homer. Can he get a quarterback plus starting wide receiver and O-line talent? If so, then roll. Obviously, it's they're going to have a couple first-round picks. They'll probably have a second-round pick relatively high in the first round or in the second round. A follow-up question from Fumble was, if it's a big if, Gabriel's a man, can you fill the big three biggest holes with your top 3 picks next year? Cornerback, left tackle, and wide receiver is on my list. Sound plausible. Pete, we know this team's a little bit of a distance from winning consistently the way they're currently composed, or at least I think I know that. Do you think Andrew Berry can fill the gap in one draft? 2026?
Clearly he can, but one, I don't like the word to use trust, but ultimately it comes down to employing a good draft process. I think for the past couple of years, the Browns have employed a really strong draft process. 2023 and 2025 were extremely strong. And that involves taking young, highly productive guys who played against high-level competition, athletic, and then ultimately getting the character stuff and the fit stuff right. All I want from any draft class, and this is why 2023 was, to me, still my favorite in terms of process. It was mostly premium positions. I related to baseball in this sense. I want to hit the ball hard every time. And to all the things I listed, I'll use 2023 as the example. In 2023, they took Cedric Tillman, highly productive receiver, out of a SEC program. Tape was pretty good. Production was good. Athleticism was good. Strong at bat. Where will the ball go off the bat? It could go out of the park. It could also go right to a fielder. There's an element of luck in this whole thing, whether it's injuries, whether it's not knowing who the kid's going to be in 2 years, all that stuff that goes into it. But I want to hit the ball real hard. They follow up with they did not hit the ball hard with Siaki Ika because everything was terrible in terms of he wasn't productive. He wasn't a good athlete. His tape wasn't good, and they picked him anyway. But everybody else in that draft class, you go down the line. They go to even DeJuan Jones, and there's an element of risk involved in that pick. But in the 4th round, he had extremely good tape. He was a really good athlete despite his size, and was one of the best tackles in college football. Isaiah McGuire was an easy pick. I still don't know how he went in the 4th round based on all the stuff I just laid out. Cam Mitchell, good pick. People don't like DTR. I still completely understand why they made the pick there. Luke Whippler, all these guys consistently hitting the ball hard, and we'll see where it ends up. And so far, even with that 2023 class, it's largely been pretty good. The injuries are getting to you in some ways, but I like where Luke Whippler can end up. Isaiah McGuire is fantastic. And then you can apply the same thing to this year. Schlesinger, Judkins, Graham, and even though I think Graham and Schlesinger had their worst game of the season against the Vikings, still look fantastic. Quinshon Judkins looks great. Dylan Sampson looks very good. We just saw the first of Dylan Gabriel. Wouldn't have been my pick, but it's going well. That's the stuff I want to. Harold Fannin looks great. That's all I can ever ask of them. Stuff's going to go where it's going to go, and you're going to get lucky or you're going to get unlucky with some of these things, injuries and the rest. But do I believe that Andrew Berry is going to employ a good draft process? Yes. And then that's ultimately where this thing goes well is how that works at that point. And given what I've seen, again, looking specifically as these past 3 years, they've gotten better and better and better. Even some of the players I didn't think were going to be good, unfortunately got hurt. With the linebacker they took last year, I hated the pick. Unfortunately, he got hurt. Looked great in preseason. So what do I know? But that's what I want to see, consistently strong draft process, and then hopefully it works out the way you hope, because that's where this thing goes.
Lane, same to you. Obviously, they've got issues on the offensive line. They've got issues of depth at wide receiver. Arguably in the defensive backfield, they can use some help. Is this fixable in one off season?
Oh, sure it is, because you got the draft, you have free agency, you can trade. The opportunity is going to be there for this team to add talent across the board, and I fully expect them to add talent. They like the trade route and they love the draft because it's the longer term, cheaper alternative for them for team building over a period of time instead of a 1 year fix. So you're going to see them make those efforts to solidify those positions and any other position that may be in question as we go along here, because we're only a few weeks into the season and a lot can happen. But you already know that you're going to need significant change, depth, talent on the offensive line. It's obvious something's going to have to happen at wide receiver unless they just hit big with these three amigos at wide receiver that have all found their way into the Browns receiver room here of late. And of course, you always can never have enough defensive back talent in this league. It's such a premium. It's just a difficult position to just fill a room full of quality type players that don't have some kind of deficiency. So I fully expect them as they go forward when we get to the offseason, they're gonna work to solidify those areas.
To specifically address the scenario he laid out, let's say Dylan Gabriel is the answer and he's great, which I'm all here for it. Let's go. I would take 3 linemen in the first 4 picks and a receiver with the other one in that scenario. It's not to say I don't care about corner. It's just I'm getting all the fat kids I can, all of them. I will take all of them, line them up and get them. The talent is there. I think the way he's going, I think they're going to re-sign Greg Newsome, and I think they'll try to find a way to keep Martin Emerson back on some sort of reasonable deal. Not to say you won't draft another one. You should always keep going, but it's all about those linemen. There is no good way to get linemen other than out of college and development. You develop yourselves. You've got a guy with a ton of experience at the collegiate level in Bloomgren. Get his guys. Maybe we're getting some hints as to what he wants in terms of the KT Levistons and the Tevin Jenkins types. Maybe that's an indicator. I don't know, but easily could take 3 linemen in the first 4 picks.
All right. Well, we have spent our hour talking about the Vikings game in the future. I just want to say that thank you to everybody who has watched us tonight and for your questions in the chat room, which we were happy to make use of. And Lane and Pete, thanks as always, guys, for hanging out with me for an hour and talking a little football. We'll be back again next Monday, 7:15, here on Gang of 3. Thanks for dropping by. Good night.